Hello everyone, my name is Christine and today I'm going to talk to you about work-life balance as a technology consultant. So it's actually pretty common to hear that as a consultant you have pretty poor work-life balance, like long hours, lots of travel, but today I'm going to really break it down to you how it could be for you as a technology consultant. So you may think it'd be very similar, but actually to some companies and even to some fields, it's like in my opinion, I even think technology consultants have better work-life balance than management consultants do, and I'm going to dive into the video as to why. We're going to go into travel. It's no surprise that a lot of consultants travel, but actually technology consultants travel a lot less than other consultants. And the reason why is that a lot of the work that we do can be done remotely. So because of that, you don't need to be on site all the time. You only really need to be there. In some cases, there are even technology consultants that don't go on site at all. It's usually the ones that are mostly working with the clients that go on site to really just try to gather requirements and try to kind of move things along in terms of client engagement. But there are also other types of technology consultants that stay home and do the work that is needed to be done or done everything remotely. In some cases, they don't even work with the client that much. They actually work more with vendors, the service providers, and actually the software itself. So the first thing I want to note is that I'm a functional consultant, and in some places they call it like a technology consultant, but for the business side, or solutions architect, all these kind of terms. There's so many terms out there for that, for being the one to really go out there and gather requirements, build relationship with the client, and really show you all the power of the software. And this is specifically for software implementations. If you're out there doing something like data analytics, you may even be completely working with the client but then not actually be going on site. But for me specifically, I'm a functional consultant doing Workday financial software implementations at Accenture. So what that means is that I'm the one that really talks to the client about what they need, how to actually build the processes and the system for them. So I work with the client a lot more than at least the technical consultants, which could be data or integration consultants. This also means I travel on site a lot more because I need to be there in person to really gather those requirements sometimes, or even show them a demo or two. So the first thing is travel. Like clearly there's always going to be some kind of work-life balance involved because you're not necessarily at home, so it could really impede into your life. And what happens to me sometimes is that I have to actually plan events and activities or meetups with friends around my travel time. Like if I have a friend coming over and this is like the only weekend she's there, I can only be there for a window of time before I have to travel. And when it comes to travel time specifically, there can be multiple ways this can happen. Sometimes you can actually travel there Monday through Thursday, and that means that you can either travel out like Sunday night or Monday morning, or come back on like Thursday night, Friday morning, or sometimes it could even be from Saturday to Saturday. You could be there for the entire time and just like take some time off there to be with the team or to go outside and hang out. So in general, it's like really up to the project and even up to the budget. For me specifically, all the projects that I've been on so far was only on an ad hoc basis. So if I'm only there for like Tuesday or Wednesday, I would fly on a Tuesday, come back on a Wednesday. Those are situations where I've been there where I don't actually have to be there the entire week. However, actually when it comes to technology consulting, you need to really follow some kind of timeline. So typically you would have like discovery sessions in the very beginning, and then you have to actually build the software, and then you test it, and after that you deploy it. So typically when it comes to testing, you're probably going to be on site a lot more to make sure you guys are running test scripts and making sure that they know what to do. So if this could mean that, like, depending on when you need to go on site, you need to actually sometimes cut into your nights, your mornings, and when I'm saying early mornings, I'm talking about it could be like 3 a.m. You may have to just like not even go to sleep, but sometimes you do have to go to sleep. Just make sure you make the flight. And then after that, you have to go out like, and maybe on a Friday night and just like, you know, sacrifice your Friday night plans. I had to do that so many times. Think about it. You're there Monday through Thursday, and then you're there the next week, Monday through Thursday. That means that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, those are the only 3 days you're home. And if you have a cat, you're just like, my cats. I don't get to see my cats that much. But thankfully, I have a boyfriend that takes care of them, so at least they're in good hands. But there are times out there where you have to sacrifice a couple of things like that, but they're really not that bad because you still have your weekend at least. So the other thing when it comes to travel is jet lag and time zone. So like for me specifically, I didn't have that many time zone issues when it came to travel. However, when I went on site, internationally, it definitely did. And I know people who like have even gone to further places than me, they're definitely, they had a hard time dealing with it. So For me, if it's like going to the Midwest from New York, it's really not that bad. It's just like 1 hour. And like even to California is not that bad. However, if I had to go to like somewhere like Copenhagen or maybe even go to China, oh, the time zones are crazy. So we sometimes actually have to plan to go there a little bit earlier, but honestly, like we kind of do want to go there earlier so that way we can travel more. You have to be fully functional and good on arrival for a presentation or for work. Sometimes if you don't have the luxury to take time off or like, well, to go a little bit earlier or to leave a little bit later. The great thing about traveling, at least when it comes to Accenture, is that they mostly follow the regional model. What the regional model is that you're supposed to be sticking within your region. If, for example, there's a project in Boston and I'm in New York and they need someone out there and I satisfy that need, they will be looking for me and not for someone from like Los Angeles. So for me specifically, I've actually not had that situation. I mean, I did have that situation a couple times, and sometimes how it happens is that because Workday Financial is a pretty niche skill, at least in the Workday practice, there's not too many people, and there's always a lot of projects out there. So for me, I've been like shipped out to Midwest, I've been shipped out to like Europe, like all those kinds of things. So I didn't necessarily have the opportunity to stay within my region sometimes. Usually it depends on who's available for the project and then who can actually do it. And the other thing is that if you're in a big city, so for me it's like New York City, and there's a lot of clients in New York City, there's like a lot of companies here, you know? So this means that you may even need to commute to the client. You may not even have to commute at all, you may just be working from home. But this just means that you may not even have to go travel at all. You might just have to go to their office and commute as if like you're an employee there. Sometimes that happens. I personally have not had that at all. I've not had any clients in New York City. Honestly, I wish sometimes because now I can be with my cats more, but in my project in DC, we do have a resource from DC, so he actually has to commute to the project and he doesn't necessarily get all those travel perks that we have. He has to take the train, he has to bring his own food or buy his own food. We at least have per diem or expense food. So sometimes when it comes to working on site, you're there usually because of the client, not to do work on site specifically. So for example, you probably have like all day sessions with presentations with the client, or maybe doing demos or gathering requirements or kind of building out the process, like think whiteboard times. So you would just be with the whiteboard and you'd just be drawing everything out with the client. So that's what you would be doing. You won't necessarily be doing head down work there. That just doesn't make sense. What we end up doing is that if we did have head down work that we need to do for the next day or at least for another client, and now I'll get into that for at least a project work perspective. So when that happens, you may have to do in the hotel. So this means that after all the work that you've done in the workday, you want to go pick up dinner, you go back to the hotel, do some work, and then this could be like up to 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. This does not happen all the time. This only really happens if you just really did not have time to do any work for the client, like to prepare for the next day, like maybe you need to clean up a presentation for the next day, or maybe you need to make sure to debug something before you do the demo tomorrow. So those are situations like that, or maybe you just have another client and then you need to do some work. So now this is actually going into our at-home remote section, and this is going to be very similar to how I'm doing it right now because it's quarantine. So when it comes to the working remotely, work-life balance, there's like a lot of things in mind because when you're on site, it's pretty simple. You just do the work and then you go back to the hotel room and then you travel back. But when it comes to working at home, the lines are blurred, and here's why. So first off, in my particular projects, or at least with Accenture, I don't know how it is with other projects out there. So in a lot of big consulting companies like Accenture, we tend to have projects teams from all over the country, maybe even the world. So for us, we have to actually work with our time zones. If, for example, I have a teammate in California, I have to work with their time zones. I can't book a call for my time 8 a.m. EST because it will be like 5 a.m. for them. So with that, I have to work with their time zone. So when it comes to this also means that they can be asking you to be working their hours too if there's something very time sensitive. So for example, my boyfriend works at Accenture too, and he actually needs to work with someone in India. So there are times he had to wake up early for calls with them, since it's like I only had to work with like the Pacific time, CST and EST, so it was not that bad for me. But there are definitely projects out there where you could be working with people all across the board, and this means that like if, for example, the main key players are in different time zones, you're gonna have to fall into their schedule. Like, luckily, because of the regional model, most of the people that I've worked on the project are very similar time zones. It's only been like a 1 hour difference for me, but honestly has not been a big deal. For some, it can be a big deal because, like, if you're in these big projects and primarily the people are in a different time zone, you may have to fall under their time zone calls instead. So the other thing that I've actually mentioned this in my work week in the life of technology consulting quarantine is that our lunch breaks are kind of blurred because sometimes we would actually be going on calls and then we kind of just forget about lunch. We don't actually have a specific time that we need to go to lunch. Like, okay, everyone at 12 o'clock, we go for lunch. That's not how it works. It's really just mostly whatever opening you have. And sometimes I actually don't have any openings and I would be eating on a client call. Of course, I mute myself. Like, you'll just make sure you mute yourself. I've heard random things on calls before, but just make sure to mute yourself and then eat your lunch nicely. And if you don't even have time to do lunch, because there's sometimes that I'm talking the entire time and it just like, you would hear, not necessarily most fun to hear on a call, especially with the client. So you may even have to push it or even try to kind of forego lunch. But that doesn't happen to me often, but this is something that you definitely should keep in mind because when you're on site, the client also needs to go on lunch. But when it comes to you here working at home, they don't know your schedule, so they sometimes just book it. And sometimes you could be working with multiple teams. So for example, if I would be on site, I could be working with the entire team the entire day, or like one team in the morning, one team in the afternoon. But here I could be working with many different teams, so they don't know my schedule. They can't just say, okay, Christine's going on lunch, so we are not going to book this time, but that's not how it works. So we need to kind of work around their schedule or whatever calls we have. Sometimes you may even have too many calls that you're working with the client and you're talking constantly that you may not even have a lunchtime, or maybe you have no calls and you can have like so many times that you can eat lunch. You can eat lunch at 10 a.m. You can eat lunch at 4 p.m. if you want. It's like what you're gonna be noticing is like when I talk about the project works can be like this. So you may have a lot of hours, you may have a very few hours, you may have no hours, you may have so many different things going on at the same time, or 2 different clients. It really depends. So now there's a few things that I like actually about working from home is that now you don't have to commute. When it comes to some big consulting companies, you either work on site or you work remotely because their offices definitely cannot hold everyone. If they did, we could probably buy a whole building, but of course we don't want to do that. Not everyone wants to come. So everyone tends to work remotely. However, we do have things in the office for people to attend for fun, so that's why you hear a lot about happy hours. From that, it's just like you don't necessarily have to go to the office, and that's actually one of the pros about being able to work from home is that you don't need to commute. For some people, actually, one thing I wanted to note is that when you are based out of the New York City office, you're actually like within a 90-mile radius of the office. You don't necessarily have to be in New York. There's a lot of people don't actually realize that. They think that you need to be in New York to be in the New York office. Our office actually has a lot of people from everywhere in the Northeast region. So that's something to keep in mind is that like you don't have to do the commute. If you did want to do the commute, you may do like 30-minute commute, maybe walking, or maybe even 2 hours. So there's so many things you can be doing out there. And honestly, like I really like the fact that I could be working remotely, but because I'm office champion, I have to be in the office Wednesday or Friday. And honestly, like with quarantine, I can't do that anyways. You don't need to commute. This also means you have time for errands. And as I mentioned before, your project work goes like this and down, up and down, all this kind of thing. So it really depends on exactly how much work you have. For example, if I have no work from like 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., I can go to the gym then and then just make up the work later on, because at this time, all I really need to do is make sure I meet all my client expectations of terms of calls and then do the work I need to do on by a deadline, but I can just choose however I want to do it and when I do my work. As long as I work with everyone's schedule. If I like have to work in a team, then I need to kind of work with their schedule as well to make sure these deliverables are completed. So with that said, my channel focuses on the career of technology consulting, professional development, personal development, and money. So if you're interested for more, make sure to subscribe. I'm doing a lot more technology consulting videos now than before. Before I did a little bit more of career skills, but I've heard a lot of people coming to me that they want more technology consulting videos, so I'm gonna be doing more for you.
Make that bank for your kitties. Yay! Oh, you're so cute.